Chapter 4. An Unexpected Find. Rakan's heart sank as the first drops of rain made their way through the sparse canopy above. Though he had perceived some time ago that the weather would take a negative turn, he had hoped this one time to be wrong. The company had been traveling on little sleep for 3 days towards Malsheth, through unfamiliar lands. Weary and cold, they stopped under the trees, their horses caked with muck and leaves. Rakan pondered what Peleus had told them before the group had parted ways. He glanced backward at Urug as he shambled forward in the mud. Rakan had always assumed that the Desh were broken beyond repair. He knew, though, that what Peleus said was true. They had all been one in the beginning. Perhaps a spark of Thessa remained even in the most scarred and perverted of the races. They all dismounted, and Belethor came and took Rakan's horse as Rakan walked the half-dash over to a nearby tree. Rakan and Peleus had decided it best that Belethor not be the one responsible for their prisoner, as he would be tempted to drag their guide as opposed to watch over him. Dervish tried to find some dry wood to make a fire, but returned with little to show for his efforts. He was able to get a small fire going from the meager fuel he had acquired. It was enough to warm their hands, but not to dry their clothes as he had hoped. As Rakan tied Urug to the tree, he looked up at the rain clouds in the sky ahead. Looks like we haven't seen the worst of it yet. Those clouds are growing darker. We'll be facing a downpour in about an hour. I hope your boots can handle the mud, he said to Urug. The half-dash merely snarled derisively at him. Rakan pulled out a piece of dried meat from his pack and stuck it in the Desh's mouth. Here, have some of this. We'll be on our way soon. Once we're closer to the fortress, we'll need your direction, and there better be no funny business out of you, or I'm sure Lord Belethor would love to ensure that steel is the only thing you taste from now on. As Urug chewed and glared at him, Rakan felt unnerved from his unyielding gaze. He shook his head, stood, and walked over to join the others huddled around the pitiful fire. Why do you waste your time talking with that thing? Is it not enough that we must suffer its company while it is yet of use to us? Belethor said. The Lord cast a hateful gaze toward the half-dash. I do not believe this one is any more noble or civil than the hordes of murderous beasts it was spawned from, even with the blood of a man. I say we give him a chance, Rakan replied. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps they have given us no indication in the past that any of them could improve, but what have we to lose? We need him for now, so at present I say we treat him like we would any other. Maybe he will surprise us all. He too cast a look at Urug, or maybe he won't, he thought. Maybe he's a beast, maybe he's not, Dervish said. Perhaps once we find out for certain, I'll be spared your endless bickering. All I know is that my people have been at war with these foul creatures for centuries. I find it hard to believe that in all of that time we would never have seen any indication that they had another side to them. Would you have seen it if it was there? Rakan asked. You would likely have discounted it. What use would you have for sympathizing with your enemies? Bah! Now look what I've done. Got sucked into it. Let us get on the road. This fire is doing us no favors. We have to find some sort of shelter, lest the coming downpour make us all ill. If you fancy it, the two of you can prattle on as we ride. As the company took up their journey once more, Belethor led the way on his prized warhorse, with Rakan's following behind leading Urug in tow. Dervish took up the rear on his pony and kept a close eye on the half-dash in front of him. Hours passed slowly by as the heavy rains began to take their toll. Their soaked clothing clung to their skins, proving of no avail to thwart the cold air that passed through the trees. The mud was thick, and although the horses were getting by slowly and with little trouble, Urug had fallen twice into the mud already. They pressed on, even as the sun began to dip below the horizon, unwilling to attempt sleep in the storm. While their horses trudged forward through the muck, Belethor noticed a cave ahead of them, where the woods met the foot of the Desh mountain. Perhaps we can find sanctuary in there, he called back so that he could be heard over the downpour. Dervish and Rakan turned their mounts toward the mountain and joined Belethor. I'll go in to check it out, Rakan said. He hesitated for a moment before handing the rope holding Urug to Belethor. Someone had to watch him while they searched the cave. I'll join you, Dervish said as he rolled off his pony. Far be it for a dweller to let a human inspect a shelter in the mountains and not go under himself. They kept low to the ground and made minimal noise as they approached the dark opening in the side of the mountain cautiously. Rakan went into the cave with a dagger in hand, keeping close to the wall. Dervish followed him near behind, his battle axe in one hand and a torch in the other. The cave was rugged and sloppy. There was no mastery in digging this out, Dervish said, half to himself. Rakan smiled. Nothing compares to the stonework of dwellers. Just as he spoke, voices echoed from deeper within the cave. Both Dervish and Rakan stopped, holding their breath in shock. Leave the torch, Rakan whispered. They inched around the corner in the dark, relying on light shining from ahead, when they spotted a massive body only 5 meters away from them. Rakan noticed the oily, vomit-colored hide of a troll, and he was not alone. On either side of him was another. The entire cave was lit with torches and a fire in the middle. The three trolls were sitting around the fire, talking and laughing together with their deep and powerful voices, which echoed down the halls of the cave. Across the cave to the other side, about 25 meters away, there was another troll standing and sorting through piles of gold pieces and other treasures. Rakan noticed Dervish leaning forward with his eyes wide and focused on the treasure. Rakan grabbed his shoulder and gave him a look that caused Dervish to lower his shoulders in shame. Rakan could see that Dervish seemed unnerved by the trolls, though he seemed to be concealing his fear to the best of his ability. Rakan motioned with his head to the way they came and slowly started backing out. The trolls went on without noticing the man and the dweller among them, obviously dull-witted and preoccupied with their own chatting and going on. Dervish picked up the torch around the corner and led them back out of the cave. The weather hadn't let up. They could see Belethor and Urg by the horses. Even the horses looked weighed down in such miserable weather. Urg was staring down Belethor. The Lord looked flustered, as usual. "It's about time you came back," Belethor shouted at them. "We were only gone for a few minutes," Dervish said. "It seemed like an eternity with this half-dash staring at me with the intent to kill the entire time. You tried just standing there letting him stare at you." "Perhaps he thought you had pretty eyes." Belethor glared at him in response. "Nonsense. Now, what of this cave? I want to get out of this dreaded weather before my sword rusts and my horse drowns." "We can't stay here," Rakan said urgently. "There are 4 trolls to our count, and even if we had more of us and one of them, we are too tired to be fighting against trolls just for a place to get out of the rain. I say we go on at the pace we are going and get out of the woods." "We've already been traveling all day and most of the night trying to find somewhere to camp. How much further until we're out of these woods?" Belethor asked. "In this weather and at our pace, we could probably make it by daybreak. If we stay along the mountainside, we could possibly come across something for sanctuary." "We'll want to stay close to the mountain anyway," Urg said. "The path we must take is over the mountain." "Ah, the beast speaks," Belethor said. Urg glared back at him in response. "Let's get a move on then. I don't like this weather any more than you do, my lord," Rakan said as he took the rope holding Urg from Belethor and then mounted his horse. "Not to mention those monsters inside, though it is a shame to leave all that golden treasure," Dervish said as he also mounted his pony. Rakan caught him taking one last look at the cave as the company began on its way. They continued walking all through the night, inching slowly closer to the end of the woods. The rain began to let up, and once they came to a clearing in the clouds, the sun began to rise above the horizon. Just as their fortunes seemed to be changing for the better, Belethor's horse let out a yelp as it came up onto its hind legs, knocking Belethor to the ground behind it. As the great warhorse came back down onto all fours, it fell to its side. Rakan saw a serpent in the mud by the horse. As it drew closer to Belethor and his horse, Rakan quickly grabbed his bow and drew an arrow. Before he could loose the arrow, Urg had run around him and his horse. He slammed his heel down on the serpent's head, pressing it into the ground and twisting it for good measure. Dervish trotted up beside Rakan as he dismounted and handed the rope binding Urg to the dweller. He went to Belethor's side to help him up, but Belethor was already leaning over his horse that lay motionless on the path. "Dayakt I temkine," Urg grumbled and spit as he looked at his small victory. "How does it look, Belethor?" Rakan asked. "We may be able to tend to it. It's only a small bite. I think it startled old Tethfall more than anything. His breath seems to be calming," Belethor said, letting out his breath in relief. "Good. I'll come back to see how I can help. Let's set up camp here in the clearing." Dervish immediately went to find dry wood for a fire. Belethor did what he could to tend to the horse's wound. Rakan took Urg to a tree and tied him to it. "Finally, some good weather, eh?" he said in an effort to make conversation. "It makes no difference to me," the half-dash said. After a pause, Urg looked to Belethor and the warhorse. That horse is no good to us anymore. He's been poisoned by that serpent. Your friend says it's only a small bite, but that's all the slithering monster needed. The poison is now in the muscle, or worse, in a vein. Either way, in minutes, it has already crippled the leg and will spread through the body. Rakan glanced at the horse and saw the muscles spasm and react to the poison that was working its way through the horse's leg. My hope was that the horse reacted in time, but there are no herbs in the area to slow the spreading, and even if there were, it may be too late. I'll go take a look at the horse. Rakan finished tying Urg to the tree as he changed the subject. Where to now, then? We'll take a few hours to dry off, eat, and rest, and then we'll set off again. This is where your guidance comes in. Urg hesitated. Rakan began to wonder if he would say anything at all to help them when Urg spoke. Up ahead there should be a pathway leading up the mountain. We'll take that. Very good then. We'll see what we can do for warmer clothing. Rakan did what he could to stay positive around the half-dash. He wasn't keen on having him with them either, but he knew that treating this half-dash brutally would only give him more reason to betray them. He hoped that his kindness towards this monster would spark something within him. Treating him kindly also helped Rakan accept the fact that they were stuck with him. He forced himself to look at him as half-man and not as half-dash. Rakan bent down beside Belethor, who looked frustrated. I don't understand, the Lord said. It's only a small bite, and he won't even stand. I think he may have been poisoned, my lord. Let me take a look to be sure. Rakan put his hand on the horse's leg, a good foot above the bite mark. He lightly squeezed with his hand, and the horse whinnied and flinched. It's as I feared, Belethor. The poison has spread up his leg. I may be able to slow it if there were herbs around, but we'll have no such luck here. And even if I did, the horse's leg would be useless. In a day or so, the poison will take his life. Belethor looked downcast at the news. He took a longing look at his prized warhorse. Rakan recalled the Lord praising the horse, claiming its superiority to the many other steeds he had owned in his life. For this reason, Rakan left the Lord to be with his steed and went to help Dervish prepare a meal. Belethor laid his head on the neck of his horse and stared at the sky. Urg stirred restlessly against the tree. His imprisonment by these weak-skinned men gave him nothing but time to reflect on his failure. He would have succeeded in killing the whole company if it was not for that magi slime Peleus who showed up and single-handedly wiped out the remainder of his company. If he had not already been engaged in battle when Peleus showed up, then Urg may have had a chance to escape and recruit other Desh to help him before the Lord of Malsheth found out about his failure. Now he was tied up as a prisoner, kept only to guide them back to his master's fortress. How was he to play this now? Perhaps he could get them to Malsheth and make the guards aware. The Lord of Malsheth may see them as his prisoners rather than he as their guide. Alas, Urg knew that it would not be so. His master was ruthless. If he tried to escape here, he knew Belethor would not hesitate to bring him down, and if he succeeded, where would he go? He looked at Belethor, preoccupied by his horse. He knew Belethor hated him, and was ready to kill him in a moment's notice. Dervish, the Dweller, always kept a close eye on him, waiting for him to move. There were times Urg thought that the Dweller's glare was more out of fear of the half-dash rather than intimidation. It was a look of curiosity as well as caution. Rakan was a different story, and a strange one at that. He had treated Urg fairly, aside from the bonds that kept him tied to the man's horse. Rakan seemed peaceful, yet his eyes showed a weathered and tired side under his confidence. His look showed wisdom, but after seeing him in battle, Urg knew there was a ferociousness that came when he drew his blade or bow. Urg had no idea why this man was so kind to him. He didn't understand why men or magi would have such compassion for beasts like Belethor and his horse, or how Rakan could treat a Dash of all things with kindness. In fact, how do any of these races get along? They were a Dweller and two men of obvious differences. A mere distinction between Dash could cause heated battle. Being a half-man, half-Dash, Urg was treated with an awful hatred from many of the pure-blooded Dash that felt they were better than him. Urg was distracted from his thoughts when he heard Dervish speak in his deep, raspy voice. Well, if we need to keep warm atop the mountain, why not kill the horses and craft cloaks out of their skins? Belethor's is dying anyhow, and ours will likely be eaten by those trolls back there. If we keep the doomed beasts, he'll just suffer. I don't think there's a need to kill all our horses, Rakan said. Belethor looked down to his warhorse, struggling now to breathe. Urg saw heaviness in the man's eyes. I will take Tethfall. It is better than watching him suffer slowly. And as Dervish says, we can use his skin to keep warm. If you'd rather I do it with an arrow, I can make it quick, Rakan offered. Urg thought they were being foolish. The thing was dying anyway. Just kill it already. It was after all just a beast, a tool for war. No, I've got this, Belethor offered as he walked over to Tethfall. Before he got there, they heard a whinny from Dervish's pony as the dweller cut the creature's throat clean open with an axe. That was more Urg's style. That's what he wanted to see, an efficient, bloody kill. Urg looked to Rakan and Belethor, who shook their heads at the lack of compassion. Rakan stripped his horse of all his belongings and sent him into the fields. Urg suspected he wanted that horse out of there before Dervish got any more careless. Belethor had taken his sword, and after caressing the horse behind the ear, he knelt and plunged it into the chest of the beast. Finally, Urg thought. Rakan went to work on skinning the horses and saving their meat to cook and their skins to wear. Dervish fashioned them into cloaks for all of them as best as he could, despite a lack of much experience with animal skins. Though hesitant, he made a cloak for Urg as well. Belethor had gone to scout ahead before dusk came. Urg sat watching, always thinking of an escape plan, but even with the three captors busy, he had no way of breaking out of the ropes tied around him. He sat there staring at them, hoping that if they caught his eye, they could see his displeasure and sense his hatred for them. Urg wondered about that strange Peleus. He had treated him differently than any member of the enemy races had. Never before did any stop to speak with Urg before attempting to slay or interrogate him. What was their game? Belethor came back and lay by the fire. He didn't say much, other than to assure Rakan that the path Urg had spoken of was up ahead, and it looked clear from here. As Dervish finished his work, he also laid down to sleep. Rakan walked over to Urg and sat down beside him. He didn't say anything. He just put down his bow as he leaned against the tree next to the one Urg was tied to. He lit his pipe and began to smoke. Urg watched him for a time, waiting for Rakan's eyes to catch his dark glare. Rakan looked at him straight in the eye. Confidently and cheerfully, he smiled at Urg, and then went on looking into the night and smoking his pipe. Urg glared at the man, but he was confused. This fellow truly was odd. Urg didn't know whether he should be more cautious, or if he was genuinely treating him with kindness, overlooking the fact that he was a Desh. He made a point to stay quiet and stay awake, watching the strange man sitting across from him. But his eyes became heavy, and finally, despite himself, he drifted to sleep. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe like usual, and leave a comment down below if you would have tried to attack the trolls or not. Until next time.